Hello, Conceal Coalition family. This is Austin Davis, your National Director of Training. I am so glad to be with you this month, and this month's topic is something near and dear to my heart: hurricane safety. Now, before you turn it off and think, oh, I'm in Kansas, I don't need hurricane preparation. Let's think about this for a second. Hurricane preparation is different than any other type of preparation. The same topic we're talking about, hurricane preparation, works in wildfire, works in grid shutdowns, civil unrest, alien abduction, maybe not, but it works on just about anything else. I like hurricane preparation because I live on the Texas Gulf Coast. I live in the Houston area. So for me, hurricane prep works out really well because it's sort of like, when you have time change, you change the battery in your smoke detector. Well, this for me is an annual time for my wife and I to go through all of our preps to make sure everything hasn't expired, everything's all charged up, good to go, and we don't need to add anything to our preparation list. Now, what expertise do I have to talk about hurricane preparation? 2008, my city got smacked by Hurricane Ike, which I could have told him beforehand this thing even hit, there's going to be a problem. You do not name a hurricane after Tina Turner's ex-husband. I kept thinking, what's next year's hurricane going to be? Hurricane Rick James? Then we had Hurricane Harvey. Hurricane Harvey was an interesting thing in about 2016, and we were surrounded by floodwaters for probably close to 2.5, almost 3 days. And both those pretty much took a heavy, heavy hit on us. I was without power for 16 days. 911 didn't work, and you were basically on your own. My favorite story, though, ever was in Hurricane Ike, my brother, who lived 1.5 miles away from me at the time, rode his bicycle over the first day. He says, the really cool thing about hurricanes is, you get to meet all your neighbors. The bad news is I hate my neighbors. Now, we talk about hurricane or hurricane preps. We need to think about this in sort of a global terms. How long you're preparing for. Now, you could be one of those world-class preppers and you're ready for end times and you've got 5 years of rice and beans stockpiled away and can barely get to sleep for all the ammo stored underneath your mattress. But if you think about it, 72 hours, 4 or 5 days, probably ought to do it. Now, my Ike situation, some things to start to open back up, even though we didn't have power, but really and truly for about a full week, you were kind of on your own. So if you didn't have it, there was no CVS open, there was no grocery stores open, the gas stations didn't have electricity to get you fuel. So the first thing is, before we get into this topic, just kind of figure out how far deep you want to go in this and how you want to plan. I'm going to break our talk down today into 3 sections. First thing I'm going to talk to you about is guns and gadgets in crisis. Next thing I'm going to talk about is we got to go, how to bug out. Then I'm going to talk to you about how to hunker down. Now, let's start off with our favorite topic because we are a Concealed Coalition family and we are basically gun-type people. When it comes to guns in crisis, there's some things you may disagree with me on, and that's okay. I will not be at your crisis and you will not be at my crisis. But I think when we think about guns in crisis, we think about, a fully maxed out shotgun, or we think about, this is when we break out the AR and we get to work. I'm not a really big fan of long guns in crisis for a couple of reasons. Number one, if you walk around with a slung gun in a crisis, you're kind of setting yourself up to be ripped off. Because remember, we want to be low key because there is no 911 calling. And I can assure you from personal experience, once nighttime comes, you're going to start getting the have-nots coming looking for the haves, if you will. And it's a direct experience of mine that some sketchy folks would show on up. So I like to be as low-key as possible. So for me, the long guns may have their place. The problem I've got is, what do I do with the long gun when it's not slung to my body? If it's a hurricane prep or a real bad natural disaster in a hot zone, you're going to have windows open. Your home's not going to be as secure and tightened up with your air conditioning on and your security system all set. So long guns have their place, but you're going to have to store them out of the way. If you have people in the house who are hunkering down with you, you have a real problem. If you travel, you can't leave them in your car unsecured. If you're going to someone else's house, you have to secure them. So long guns have their place, but that's okay. For me, I think your daily carry gun really rises to the occasion at this point. But I may talk to you about a gun in a crisis in a kind of a different way if we're talking about hurricane prep. And that is, I'm a real big fan of the snubby. The reason I like a snubby is because we have really big guns. If we have to go to trouble and we carry other guns, we're getting away from trouble. And since you're probably going to be in lighter clothes, less comfortable clothes, and you're already uncomfortable anyways, a small carry gun works well. A revolver in a pocket holster in a crisis is awesome. First off, it's probably one of the fastest draws. If you have to leave your place of security and leave a firearm with someone who's not really firearms friendly, it doesn't get much simpler than list of options. You're probably not going to have to shoot a long distance in this situation, probably not farther than the longest distance in your house, because before you know it, these people are going to be knocking your door, asking you questions and trying to get close enough in your area of vulnerability. So I really think crisis guns, a snubby, has its place. If you do decide you want to go full end times Mac Daddy gun, then you may want to think about fully tricking out a pistol. This one has a Surefire light, has a DG switch. So this little button right here is what turns it on. The regular switches also work as normal. It's got a compensator, red dot, holds a bunch of bullets. And if you're wearing a full-size shirt, concealing this is not a problem. In case you're wondering, I'm probably going to get answers about this. It's a Tennecore holster. I don't have any association with Tennecore, except I own about 5 of their holsters, and I think they're amazing. There is a holster not made by Tennecore that I'm a really big fan of for a crisis, and it's called a Filster Enigma. And what this does is this sort of attaches sort of like a thinking person's belly band and allows you to have full capability to carry just about any kind of gun you want, independent of the clothing. So this is something that attaches to your body. So if you're wearing fishing shorts or sweats or basketball pants, you can just put those over this and still carry a full-size gun, a snubby, pretty much just about anything you want. So when it comes time for guns, we really want to think about what's first rule of a gunfight in crisis. Have the gun. It means have it with us. You're probably going to be spending a lot more time in a crisis in your front yard, out and about with your neighbors. And so you want to have something that stays with you, walking over your neighbors to see how they're doing and how that tree that fell in their house is doing while you've got your shotgun or your AR strapped to you may not give you the neighbor of the year award, depending what neighborhood you live in. Maybe yes, maybe no. But your duty firearm will work well. In a crisis, you're going to probably have more time with your family in the house, which also means we're going to have to make sure that we have a secure way to store this firearm when it's not attached to your body. So make sure that in a crisis, we still follow all of our gun safety storage protocols. And if you ever spent more than 2 minutes around me, whether it's in a crisis or not, you know my attitude about firearms. Gun ownership is your right, but secure storage is your responsibility, and there's only 3 places for a firearm, whether you're talking normal situation or most especially in a crisis, and that's in the hand of a rational, sober, competent, trained adult, attached to the body of a rational, sober, competent, trained adult, or locked away from anybody that's not a competent, sober, trained adult. Now, when we think about crisis and crisis management, because 911 is not coming, you're on your own, you are your own first responder, there's some other things you might want to consider that I think are just as important as your firearm, and that's going to be a good defensive flashlight. This one's a cloud defensive. It is an absolute beast. And what I like about this is when nighttime comes and I need to see what's going on around my property or in a long part of the home, I have the ability to blind people, assess, search. It doesn't get much better than this. The problem with this, though, is you really want to save this for special occasions. Yes, it has a long run time, 45 minutes, an hour before it really starts to drop off. But the other thing you want to have in a crisis is a headlamp. What I do with a headlamp is I just hang it around my neck. When I need it, boop, pop it on up. I can go ahead and turn this on. It lights up my area, keeps my hands free. Everyone in a crisis needs your own headlamp. This will change your life in a low light situation. If you ever spend time camping with one of these, it's an absolute necessity. So you got a good light, you got a good carry system that also works well in comfortable or hot weather clothing. You have some other things we might want to talk about, and that is a really good pepper spray. I'm an absolute huge fan of pepper spray in all situations, but especially in a crisis. And if you've seen the Concealed Coalition University episode on pepper spray, you know in about 85% of the cases, your gun's 100% the wrong tool. So if you just need simple force, and in a hurricane, it could just be something as simple as your neighbor just kind of losing their mind. What I found that after going through 2 extended hurricane seasons and having the deep freeze, which locked us down with no power in a freezing situation a couple of years ago here in Texas, is some of these people can get a little funky. I'm a crisis intervention counselor, and one of the things we do in police work is we understand that 1 out of every 4 people in this country goes through a mental health crisis at some point in the year. And when you put extra external stresses on them, like no power, heat, flooding, insecurity of where their other family members are, what their place of employment is going to be like when this all clears off, the financial distress to not be able to work, that can put stress on people. You may not want to shoot drunk Billy, next door neighbor who's in your face about some issue, but a pepper spray would come in really easy. Now, some of you are going, well, we can always go with the 1 pound unit, which can clear out a whole lot of problems. If you ever watch Dog the Bounty Hunter, this is the size he carries on his leg. This throws about a 30-foot cone of really unpleasantness. And if you just decide that none of this is really enough to really get you excited, how about a pepper spray grenade? It's kind of like a bug bomb. You take this thing, pitch it out, you clear out a back window, backyard, patio, just about any other space. So considering also less lethal weapons, because again, a lot of this is not going to be people trying to break in your home, hurt you and your family directly. It's going to be people who have temper tantrums just because they're put in uncomfortable spaces in their minds in a place where they're beyond their ability to cope. So once you have your firearms, your carry system, your enemy use of force, and your light figured out, and your storage systems, now in times of crisis, whether, again, this is a hurricane, whether this is a wildfire, an earthquake, civil unrest, pick your poison. We're in a scary situation right now with the election coming up where I'm not sure what's going on, but everyone I talk to is convinced that everything's going to come unglued. I think we're a little more rational as a culture than that, but hey, I wouldn't bet one way or the other right now. We have to decide, are we going to stay or are we going to go? Now, when it comes to hurricane, if you decide you're going to stay or go, there's some things you need to think about. One of them is how you're going to go. You're probably going to take your own vehicle or vehicles. If you're going to take your vehicle, your mobility is totally limited by the amount of fuel you carry. So a couple things. If you think you're in a situation where you may have to leave, go ahead and make sure that you got that tank topped off. I'm a huge fan of an extra 5-gallon cans of gas. I drive a Jeep Gladiator, so 5 gallons of gas is another 100 miles basically. My wife's car, it's another 150 miles. This also, by having extra 5 gallons of gas, gives me the option of gifting them to somebody who doesn't have enough fuel to get out of the path of whatever disaster there is. So having some extra fuel, decide to go. Before you decide you're going to need to go, make sure you've prepared the vehicle to go. Check your tire pressure. But there's a few things you might want to add to the list that might make your life a whole lot easier. There it is. One of these. This is a car starter pack. What I love about one of these gadgets is it allows me to power up my phone, the lights on my firearms, whatever I need to recharge, but also lets me jump a vehicle. I'm not a big fan of jumper cables these days. If someone's in trouble, whether it's you or someone you care about, to try to get them started. And it's amazing in crisis how often the vehicle won't start because they're trying to charge up things, or they leave their lights on. What I like about this is it's independent of my electrical system, my vehicle. So if something about their system doesn't short out my system. I think this was $60 off Amazon Food. So just dial Amazon and get one of these little things. I also carry a tire inflator, and I have a tire hole patch kit. What you're going to find out is when you have a hurricane blow through, there's all kinds of nails, broken glass, debris in the road. And the number of people I experience who have tire problems, which kills mobility in a crisis, is pretty common. So make sure you've got your spare, your jack, you've got the lug wrench that fits on there. You know where that little special tool is if you have locking lugs, which you should. And then make sure you have a inflator and you have a tire patch kit. They're about $30-$35 for a tire patch kit. You can get a good electrolyte charged inflator for $30, $40, $50 off Amazon. And these are good to have anytime you're in a bad situation, but especially in a crisis. Now, once you decide you're going to leave, if you're going to leave in separate vehicles or you and another family member have vehicles, family service walkie-talkies are amazing. It allows you to say, hey, I've got to get off the road. Hey, I'm running low on fuel. Hey, I've got a warning light on my car. It works really, really well. Now, once you decide that you're going to leave, you prepped your car. If you've got two cars going, you've got a family service radio between them. Next, you have to decide is, when do you leave? If you know a hurricane's coming or a calamity, if you leave too early, that's not a problem. But it may be a problem leaving too late. One of the problems leaving too late is you're not going to have fuel or actual support on the way out there. But there's a good part about leaving a little later than you think. And that is, we've experienced this in Houston. When everybody gets on the road, a lot of people get locked up for 10, 12. My parents in Ike got locked up for like 12 hours on Interstate 10 trying to get out to some family friends in Fredericksburg. Thank goodness they had extra fuel and preparations from it. Now, if you decide you're going to go, one of the simplest things to think about is to go ahead and just think you're planning on a camping trip. If you are like me and camps a lot, this is really the best way to go, because then when I get to wherever I'm heading to, if I can't find a hotel room, it doesn't matter. I have a tent, I have water, I have cooking supplies, sleeping stuff, any place I can find. I show up at a relative's house, there's no spare space in the house, no problem. Let me stay in your front yard, your backyard, and you are self-supporting. What I do with all my camping gear is I keep them in totes. I've got big strips of masking tape and martial arts that explains what's camping gear, what's food, what's cooking gear, what's hygiene stuff. And all you gotta do is pull, throw them in the car, and literally in less than 5 minutes, all my camping gear and all my tents are all in one spot. Bang, 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 bang. They're set up. Next thing, if you decide you're going to leave, make sure that you have a list. And you want to make sure you have a list so that you don't forget important stuff. So let's say you have pets. Do you have a pet carrier for them? Do you have food? Do you have water? Do you have food and water bowls? If you have a cat, do you have a way for them to have some sort of like enclosed playpen for them to run around in? Do you have stuff for them to do the litter box? If you have a dog, do you have their favorite toy, their favorite bedding? If you have children, do they have their favorite toys? Do they have their medications? For you, do you have your spare eyeglasses? Make a list for all these things and keep it in a general location. Also, we use big North Face bags. We bought a bunch of them years ago, and they have served us well. Just big, bright-colored duffel bags. And so we both have our duffel bags, and we know in times of crisis that I will grab my bag, and I've got a list ready to go that tells me what I need to pack. For me, it's pretty easy because I'm on the road training all the time. So all my toiletries and important stuff is in one big gallon Ziploc that I just put in my bag whenever I'm leaving. Just throw socks, undies, whatnot. Probably take more clothes than you think you need, but also make sure you take your rain gear and stuff to keep you warm and comfy. Once you've decided you're going to leave the house, the big decision is, do you take every gun you own or only the guns you're going to need? If you take every gun you own, you've got to store them somewhere when you get to a shelter or another family place, something to think about. Me personally, that's why I have a secure, bolted to the foundation in the walls, the studs of the house, gun safe. I'm going to leave everything behind. Before you leave, though, make sure you grab the bag that's hopefully fireproof, that has all your important papers in it. This has our passports, our birth certificates, all the insurance documents, all the stuff. It stays in one big bag. It stays in my gun safe. So when it's time to go, just grab it and head on out. Now, leaving has some upsides, but before you leave, make sure you do a few quick things before you lock the house down and leave. Number one, you may want to leave. If somebody's going to be staying around you trust, get their contact information so you can call back and check to make sure the house is okay. Also, lock everything up that you can in your gun safe. If you don't have a gun safe, hide as many things as possible. Make notes because you'll forget about where you stuck them. Also, document everything in your house so that the whole place gets blown away, the whole place gets flooded. If you've got a video evidence of all this, any firearms you leave behind, make sure you have numbers on the firearms. I think I've done more than enough Instagrams or whatever we're doing about this fact. Nothing frustrates me more as a police officer than making a traffic stop, finding that dude with the gun. I know that's not his gun. We call and check the number and it comes back not stolen. I got a wave as your gun and that bad guy go away. So make sure you record your numbers. That way, if the firearms do get lost and you have photographic and video evidence of these firearms, of anything that makes them unusual, because some of your guns are going to have all kinds of weird accessories that you need to add to the value of replacing that firearm. So leaving has its place. Set it up so that if you ever did have to leave in a hurry, in our house, I think within 30 minutes of the time I said we have to go, we can be out the driveway with a secure home, all the stuff we need, leaving the stuff we don't need behind in the best possible way. Now let's talk about hunkering down at home. I hunkered down both times through Hurricane Ike and Hurricane Harvey, and both times worked out well for me. I have to admit, though, there were some times in the middle of Hurricane Ike, that storm, I had some doubts whether or not my home was going to hold up. I had some real doubts whether or not trees were going to be coming into my home. So before you just get real cavalier about, this is my house, I'm going to stay, think about the downsides, and not only of you, but of the other family members. But if you decide you want to hunker down, there's a few things you have to think about. First and most important is water. We can go a long time without food. We can go a long time without air conditioning, but we can't go far without water. The simplest and easiest way to store 100 gallons is a thing called a bob. This one's called a pool something or another. Basically what this is a very fancy bag that you put inside your bathtub. and they cost about $35 off Amazon. And they say it's 130 gallons. My guess is closer to 100. And what happens is now your bathtub has 100 gallons of fresh water, and it comes with this little pump. And if you figure 3 gallons a day per person, you can go a long time without having to tap into any other water source than that. So, huge fan. Food. When it comes time for food, you might want to just keep a special tote handy that's always empty. So if you do have to leave, you can throw all the non-perishable canned goods, some disposable knives, plates, some forks, and some paper towels, and then put it in that bag, and away you go. One good-sized tote, some quick running through the pantry, you can probably set yourself up really well to not have to resupply for a long time. The goal with hunkering down is you want to set things up so that you don't have to leave to go find other things. To me, the less I have to mix with the general population when there's no electricity, no police, high heat, high stress, the better. And my neighbors had to wait in line in the grocery store. They only let 4 or 5 people in. They would only let them pay with cash. Some people didn't have enough cash. So you really want to make sure you can hunker on down. So we have food, we have water. Make sure you have enough medication. I have a few friends of mine who are cancer survivors who need specialized medication. I have a very close friend of mine who's had a kidney transplant. He needs certain amounts of medication. A friend of mine's had a liver transplant. I know you're probably thinking right now, you need healthier friends. These are amazing people who survived amazing stuff. The problem is, though, is a lot of them don't have enough medication on hand. For some people who have medication needs to be refrigerated, you might need to think about how you're going to keep those things kind of cool. While we're talking about refrigeration and keeping things cool, there is sort of a cheap way to handle that. One of the things I recommend is if you think there's a crisis coming, take as many zip top bags as you can, fill them full of water, and put them in your freezer and get as much thermal protection as you can. Then you can use that in an ice box, or you can use it in your refrigerator to kind of make that food last a lot longer. You know, if you have one of those big Chester freezers like we do out in our garage, you pack that thing full of big, massive amounts of ice. A lot of your frozen food or your refrigerated food will last a lot longer than you might even be aware. Plus, if you have a power outage, you don't open that freezer up, you may find in 2 or 3 days, it's still all pretty darn cold. But you have to make sure all those dead spaces are filled with thermal mass and it's all up to speed. Some other things you might want to think about are eyeglasses. I don't wear my eyeglasses all the time, but I need them to see far away. So if I'm going to drive, I need a pair of glasses. So if you're going or staying, make sure you have enough eyeglasses. If you're a contact wearer, make sure you have enough of that stuff to kind of keep you on running. Flashlight batteries, and I'm a big fan of a portable radio. It's funny, most of us now in the age of the internet don't have portable radios. These things run forever. And when you have a power outage, you can find out with the weather service what's going on. This is a Sony shortwave. I probably owned this thing for 20 years, something like that. And it's traveled with me all over the world, and it's served itself very, very well. Might want to have a manual can opener. And also, if you're trying to figure things out, whether you're staying or going, make sure you have cables for everything you need. And I like having big rechargeable bricks. My auto start thing works wonderfully recharging cell phones and flashlights and headlamps and all that other stuff. You want to make sure that you have all the personal hygiene stuff you need. And of course, you want to have enough change of clothes so you don't have to do laundry and waste time with that. You might also want to consider taking a picture of your pets. And you also might want to put all contact information, take some tape it up so it's weatherproof, and put it in each one of your kids' pockets or attach somehow to their shoes so that somehow if we all get lost when we're traveling or something goes wild, we have a way to identify everybody. And it's not uncommon in a crisis for the police to get calls or have to try to find some missing kid because your kid went out and played and had a hard time getting back or whatnot. So trying to establish as much communication as possible. Also, if you've ever watched any of my training videos, you know that I also carry in the back of my phone case. I'm going to show the other side because all the numbers on the other side of this is in handwriting, all the important phone numbers I have. That way, if my phone ever dies, I can't get a charge on it. The good news, though, is anybody who does have a charge on the phone, or I live in a neighborhood where people still have landlines, if you can believe that. If I get to a landline, at least I have access to those phone numbers. I'm not in a place in my life anymore where I remember everybody's phone number. If it's not in the phone, I don't got it. So make sure you have redundancy. The real thing you want to think about in a coming hurricane crisis is forewarned is forearmed. Proper planning prevents poor performance. We want to put things in the best way possible. Also, make sure that you have enough comfort and sanity items around. So if you have smokers, make sure there's enough nicotine and tobacco to keep that going. If you have people who consume alcohol, make sure there's enough, but make sure they don't get drunk and stupid, because we're under a lot of crisis, and keep that in track. Make sure that if you do leave, one thing I forgot to mention is make sure your kids' favorite toys, Snubby, Wubbies, blankets, whatnot, is ready to go with them as well. I don't know what the future holds. I know we have a hurricane coming up the Gulf right now. I think it's going to head south of us, but it was a perfect time for this topic. This is probably, if you talk to my wife, she's kind of the weather person of the family. She says this is like the biggest hurricane this early in the season that's probably been recorded in a long time, if not ever. So we have a lot of hot water in the ocean, and this thing could come on up. But it doesn't really matter if it's a hurricane. Basically, the whole thing about Concealed Coalition is you assume that you're your own first responder, that no one's coming to help you. So I want you to just think of this as another way to protect yourself. But it is more than just guns. It's also intermediate use force weapons. It's having a big bright flashlight to blind them and see what's going on, see what's in their hands. Having a plan to leave if you need, and make sure the stuff you leave at home is not going to be taken or damaged or misused and harm other people. So this is sort of a totality of circumstances in a time where many people feel unease about the current situation. So hurricane season might be a perfect time for you to think this on up. So many of the things we talked about, like how to deal with low light situations and pepper spray and de-escalation of situational awareness that you need in a crisis, is in Concealed Coalition University. If you haven't seen those episodes, please do. If it's been a while since you've seen them, go back and watch them. You probably only retained about 15 or 20% of it. You're probably going to look at it and go, wow, I don't remember that for the first time. It was still there, but it's pretty information dense. You might want to go back, because remember, your training needs to be three things to be valid: recent, relevant, and realistic. And hopefully I will see you at the end of hurricane season, and you and your home and your family are all safe. I like to end all my chats, anytime we spend any time together, be a guardian always, but a warrior when needed.